I see big names on the internet saying they didn't get paid. It took them a year plus, it took them 3 years plus to get paid from a big song.
Yeah.
It's never happened with me. A lot of people ask me, what can I do to get them to pay? You have to figure out how to make it a priority for them. They'll give you the classic, we never want to work with you again. I've gotten that response a million times, and I've also seen that never actually follow up and do that. Lawyers and other managers may prioritize just the relationship and they don't want to bother the label, but that doesn't help get the job done. A lot of people will say, don't sacrifice a relationship over a few $1,000s. I agree with that, but I also think that if you never step up and never tell people what you're worth, they'll keep just trying to screw you and lowball you every time.
You went off on stage.
This will probably be the most informative video you've seen about the business side of being a producer. Our guest today has built a reputation for getting his clients paid faster than probably anybody else in this industry, and he is known for going all out for his producer clients. And his client roster includes dozens of A-list producers, and he has been a leading voice in the producer community for the last 5 years. Our guest today is music attorney Adam Freedman. This is a very special episode for me because producer royalty probably would not exist if it wasn't for Adam. I first discovered Adam about 3 years ago, right before I started law school, and I loved how he was able to build a community and a following just off of sharing information and making things accessible that empower creatives to really reap the most benefits out of their work. And he inspired me to pursue a career where I was also educating creatives online. So when he posted an internship position about 2 summers ago, I started freaking out because I knew that this would be the perfect opportunity for me to get my foot in the door in the music industry and to start working with some major clients. And I worked for him for over a year, and I started as an intern and then worked my way up to a law clerk, which is essentially a paralegal. And about 80% of what I did for Adam was representing producers for their major placements. And most of that process really involves just payment chasing and harassing labels until they gave our clients their advances. All right, maybe not harassing, but definitely following up very consistently. And one day I remember Adam saying, like most of this work isn't necessarily legal work. Really, like anybody could do this. He even had a tweet he posted probably like 2 years ago. I'm gonna put a screenshot of it where he was saying that maybe somebody should start a debt collector for producers in a sense. So he gave me the idea to start producer royalty, which I wanted to be a debt collector that helped producers chase down their advances for major placements. And producer royalty is evolving very quickly to be much more than just a debt collector. It's really becoming a full-on management and consulting company, except I don't sign producers to full management deals. And I wanted the foundation of producer royalty to be based on education and getting this information out to the community. But in this interview, we talk about a lot more than just collecting payments. We talk about different types of publishing deals and what a producer should look for, Adam's perspective on signing with other producers, which are called production deals, mistakes that Loopmakers and other producers make, what to look for in a good entertainment lawyer, how to collect your master royalties, and a lot more. So I just wanted to ask again, if you haven't already, please subscribe. And I know a lot of y'all are in those producer group chats. If you could share this video in those producer group chats, I can promise you that if we get this information out there will be a lot less producers that are struggling with collecting their payments. I appreciate you guys for tuning in for this one. Now let's get to the gems. Welcome back to the 6th episode of the Producer Royalty Podcast. This is a very, very, very special moment for me because, with all seriousness, like, Producer Royalty would not exist if it wasn't for this man right here to my left. I'm here with Adam Freedman, and yeah, I'm gonna give like a long intro at the beginning of this episode, so I won't go into it now. But like, thank you so much for joining me today, Adam. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Like, this is like a full circle thing for me. So, just generally speaking, could you tell the audience what you do as an attorney and specifically for producers, like what are some things you also do as well on top of that?
So for producers specifically, I help them handle producer agreements to make sure they get paid from placements, handle record deals, pub deals, and then other sorts of matters are helping artists clear their albums, do all the producer agreements, but from the artist side, do all the featured artist agreements, and help them register their trademarks, copyrights, help handle some basic disputes, write strongly worded letters, and things like that.
Yeah, I like that you ended it on the strongly worded letters because that's one thing you are absolutely amazing at is that you differentiated yourself in this industry by being somebody that you could just tell through your online presence, but also through talking to you that you have a deep affinity for making sure your clients are taken care of. And you have this attitude that like you are just kind of like you will go above and beyond to make sure their interests are represented.
Yeah,
Would
that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
yeah. So where did that mentality come from? Like, what made you come into this industry? Where do you feel like that came from?
Oof. I think that came from coming up as a musician myself. I played in bands throughout college and I saw everything from the artist side and just seeing how badly artists and producers get screwed all the time. And I guess maybe I take it a little too personally, but I'm just yeah, I just don't want to see that. I just want to make sure everybody knows what they're worth.
Yeah, yeah, because a lot of lawyers enter the industry with a very similar type of perspective, but then they wind up getting sucked to a certain side where they realize like it's in their own best interest to like kind of be buddy with like the other lawyers and labels and stuff like that. You haven't felt that kind of like pull to kind of like go into
Oh man, I mean, I could
that's
see
tough.
why everyone gets sucked into that direction. I mean, money is money, but I think a lot of people also come to me because of, I guess, my integrity, that they know I'm going to give them my honest opinion. I'm not just going to tell them to take a deal because I get paid. And in fact, I've told people, don't take the deal because if you, and that's coming from someone who would get paid more if they did take it.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is.
Yeah, what goes on in your head in those situations? Like, is it like you just feel comfortable enough where it's because that's such a tough thing to navigate. You know what I mean? Like, you could be benefiting if you give if this producer's deal goes through. So just for you, it's like,
I guess that's just a personal thing. I mean,
yeah,
I'm blessed. Luckily, I don't need the money, but
yeah.
I could see how things could be a lot differently if I did.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of you're known for getting your producers, and this is something you're very proud of, your clients are proud of. I'm very proud of it. You've taught me what I know about it for getting your producers paid very quickly, quicker than a lot of other major artists like or producers like Murda Beats and people in that space. Like you will oftentimes get your clients paid quicker, even though they're like a loop maker. What do you attribute that to?
I think just the willingness to be tenacious and to keep following up. And I guess there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of things that go into that. A lot of factors. So many entertainment attorneys are just one or two people's shops, and they just keep taking on more and more clients. So they just don't have the capacity to keep following up and to stay on top of every single matter. But also just the willingness to keep following up while other lawyers and other managers may prioritize just the relationship and they don't want to bother the label, don't want to bother the other side. But that doesn't help get the job done.
Yeah, yeah, and really, like, if there's one thing, and there's a lot of things I learned from you, but like, it's just the follow up in the producer community is just that word alone. Like, I feel like it needs to be on billboards, like follow up, because that's like the secret to getting everything done. It's just following up.
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, so there's a lot that you do for producers. Is there anything that you would say that a lot of producers are kind of missing or don't really understand, or you just you see as a common theme that producers just don't, that's holding them back?
Oh man, the same thing as every time. It's what a big thing is what you were just saying, following up. I hear from potential clients who reach out to me and they say I got a placement. They told me they were going to get back to me in a week, and that was 6 months ago. What should I do? Reach out to them again. Follow up. Why haven't you followed up and see what the deal is?
Yeah, yeah. Like, I love how you say that the labels, and this is gonna be a clip that I've already posted, but you say that the labels are just really overworked a lot of times. Like the A&R department, there's not enough of them, and like it seems like they're just. Do you think they're actually overworked, or it's just kind of like, if you had to guess?
Oh,
Yeah, it's hard to answer that. I don't even know,
I mean,
but
I think they are overworked. I
yeah,
think some people can handle it, and some A&Rs crush it, and they get promoted. But a lot of the ones you see can't handle it. They get overwhelmed. They choose to just not respond to their smallest matters, just ignore the smallest artists on their roster,
yeah.
and that leads to these situations where producers can't get paid from those projects.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense for sure. So, how long do you feel like it usually takes to get paid as a producer?
It could take anywhere from 1 to 3 months. But I see big names on the internet saying they didn't get paid. It took them a year plus. It took them 3 years plus to get paid from a big song.
Yeah.
It's never happened with me.
Do you feel like is there so sometimes I'm happily surprised. Something will slip through the cracks for me, and then like 2 months later, I'll get an email from the label. Does that happen like a good amount? You would say, or is it like I'm trying to picture what it looks like on their end, where it's like, yeah, how are you even realizing that this email from like 3 months ago, you missed it? So it's kind of. Do you feel like they do sometimes come around like in the long run, or it's kind of like
I guess
that's a weird
I get
question, but
I guess I have faith that they'll come around in the long run, that everyone will get paid eventually,
mhm.
but who knows when that'll be,
Yeah, yeah.
especially if it's taken them months to respond to you from their end.
Mhm.
Yeah, who knows how long it would take? Years, I would say.
Yeah. What are some of the better or worse worse labels to work with, I guess?
In terms of getting paid and
Yeah, in
getting
terms of
some
getting
sort of
paid specific, like
transparency.
the efficiency level
Oh
of them.
man,
And if you don't want to answer this question, I could cut this out. But I know you know what.
anyone under UMG, Universal Music, they just make it so hard. That's Def Jam, Interscope. They just all make it so tough. You have to, if you want to get paid your royalties, you have to reach out to royalties at universalmusic.com and they never respond to you. I'm sure everyone who's watching this knows how it is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, probably like 90% probably don't have placement, so they probably don't. But yeah, so when a frequent trick that they play is they say that you need the fully executed agreement to actually pay out. Fully executed means it's signed by all the parties of the contract to actually pay out the contract. Do you feel like that's usual to pay out the advance? Do you feel like that's usually the case, or is there a way to kind of get around that if they do say that?
I guess that gets back to the point about following up. I've found that a lot of labels will say that initially and will say that's their protocol, that's their requirements. But if you make a fuss, if you haven't been paid, if a song has been out for however long, for months, and you still haven't been paid, just because you're waiting for the fully executed agreement, if you make a big enough fuss, they'll pay you without the fully executed agreement.
Okay, so if you're a producer and because a big issue that's not really I've never really even seen it talked about online is that artists just don't sign their agreements. Like so, if you're a producer and the label tells you we're waiting for the artist to sign the agreement and it's been like a month, and you feel like producers can be pretty confident saying like, hey, like I've been waiting for a month. I know the artist hasn't signed, but like they agreed to these terms already. You know what I mean? Like this is something that you should be able to pay out.
I guess that gets to the ways to make a fuss with the labels. For example, if you haven't been paid for so long, a lot of people ask me, what can I do to get them to pay? You have to figure out how to make it a priority for them. If the song has been out for months, they still haven't been paid. Maybe if they don't pay, set a deadline. If they don't pay, I don't. Maybe you'll take the song down because it's just been so long. You don't want to work with them anymore, or you'll charge them even more money.
Yeah, because that's a big thing that you do that I've never seen anybody else do. So, what is that strategy that you use where you sometimes charge your clients double? Like, can you break that down? Like, what situations you use it? Not charge your clients double. I'm sorry, charge the artist double.
I mean, that's for situations where they're just taking an egregiously long time. For example, if we have the contract done, my client signed, but we're just waiting for the artist to sign for months and months. Of course, I understand why the label or the manager is not going to press the artist to sign because they just don't want to rub that artist the wrong way. But if you tell them if they don't sign the contract, what we agreed to 5K to pay the producer 5K is now 10K, maybe they'll be a lot more interested in signing so they don't have to pay that.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you've had some type of success with that?
Uh, Tons of success with that.
Yeah, and they'll and is there initial pushback where it's like, how does that look like on your end? Where it's like, all right, because I've seen it. I'm asking leading questions. I know how this is gone, but like,
I mean, I guess that gets back to what you were saying at the very beginning about producers just standing up for themselves. That, yeah, you'll get some pushback. They'll give you the classic, we never want to work with you again. You're making it like you're being so difficult. Why would we ever work with you? Yada, yada, all the classics. But I've gotten that response a million times. And I've also seen that never actually follow up and do that. Like, no, I've never seen anyone actually get blackballed or anything.
yeah. So they'll say that the relationship with the artist, like the artist, is not going to want to work with. They'll say that kind of explicitly, right? Like the
Yep.
artist isn't going to want to work with you again, and you actually haven't seen that happen in your experience. Like, I mean, I guess it's hard to say, like, if the artist is really.
It's hard to know. Of course,
Yeah,
it's hard to know what
know, but.
opportunities someone lost because you never hear about those.
Mm-hmm.
But especially considering most of like hip hop specifically, so much is done over the internet, sending beats, and they'll just go through a ton of beats at a time. They don't even know who the producer is
Yeah.
so often these days.
Uh-huh.
That's why I don't think a producer should worry about getting blackballed.
Yeah.
The
So.
artist couldn't blackball you if he wanted to.
Got you. So on the artist side, because you've represented a few artists and like bigger artists, and you've helped them clear projects. Like I don't really know what it looks like on that side from the artist perspective. Like how does that usually go down when you're clearing a project from the artist perspective?
How does it go down?
Yeah.
It's funny seeing it from the other side. I see why producers are treated how they are, but basically you just take all the tracks, find out who the producers are on all the tracks, find out the contact info, reach out. But of course, you make a deal with one of the producers, and then as you're about to finish the paperwork, they tell you, there's a loop involved, and the loop was made by 3 other producers. So now there's 4 producers on the track, and you have to reach out to each one of them. Suddenly, this is getting a lot messier, especially if you're only paying them $1,000, $2,000. It's not even worth the time of reaching out to all those people.
Yeah. Where does the budget come from?
The budget is usually from the label. The label
will tell. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, the label will work with the artist to to take their advance, say they got $1 million advance, they know the budget for the project is going to be $50,000, $100,000, and the remainder is going to go to the artist's pocket. But it's really just a matter of working with the teams around you to figure out what the budget is.
Okay, so if you're working with the art, so you said that based off the advance that they do, is it like in the recording contract, whether like what the budget for the project will be
No,
for
but they'll
production
work with you
sometimes?
because they don't want to give an artist the advance and then he or she just spends it all.
Yeah,
That's the last thing they want.
I'm sorry, I'm a little lost. They don't want they'll work with you as
No,
the
they'll work with the artist
yeah.
to say to figure out what the budget should be.
Okay.
And also if they go over budget, the label will just throw more money on top of it,
Uh-huh.
but that'll just be recoupable on the back end.
Okay, so what does it look like? Let's say if you're trying to clear a song for the artist and the producers are stuck at $8,000. We want an $8,000 advance. We're not going any lower. What does that kind of even look like on your end?
I mean, you just have to go back to the budget and see if you can move anything around and see if it's and figure out if it's worth it or not.
Is the strategy to propose less than like what? Let's say you're given a $20,000 budget. There's 10 songs. That means $2,000 per song. Is the strategy to offer everybody 1,000 and just hope that everybody takes that because some people are not gonna do less than. You know what I'm trying to say?
Basically,
Yeah.
it's to estimate how much each is going to cost.
Yeah.
That's step one. But that's a question of how to budget, and that's less of my area of what I'm involved with.
Okay, so they'll tell you this is what you should propose per song initially.
Yeah.
Like that's okay. Really, got you. That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't really know how that works. So yeah, interesting. So, what do you say to producers that are kind of scared to burn bridges with artists?
Or just to go back to that last point.
Yeah, if you have anything else.
Yeah,
to
just to
add.
go back to the last point. It's a lot easier when things are getting done ahead of the release. That's when you could say genuinely, like if you are like we can't afford your fee, if you really are firm on that, then we can't do the song. And if you're doing it all beforehand, I mean that's all respectful, that's business. But things in hip hop get a lot messier because most of the time it's done after the release.
Yeah. So you gave me some perspective that I hadn't considered before on why hip hop is a little bit different. I don't know if it's a good reason necessarily, but what's the kind of reasoning that you've seen for why hip hop clears songs kind of around the timeline, around the time that the album is released, or a little after it even?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors. The first is that you're usually dealing with an artist who had one song that got big on TikTok, and then all of a sudden he's getting offered a record deal. So that artist is probably like a teenager, doesn't know business. They have a manager who came out of the woodwork and hit them up based on their hot song. So nobody knows what they're basically nobody knows what they're doing is one of the things. And then they're signed to a major label who works with so many artists that this new artist from TikTok is not a priority. So that's just how the communication breaks down, like you were getting at so many times, and why it's up to producers to follow up because you just have to cut through that mess. Like
Yeah.
so much of the problems I see has to deal with incompetence and people just not knowing what they're doing versus intent. Like I never see someone intentionally trying to screw someone over.
Really? You would say that? I
Um,
mean, I guess it's hard. Well,
Well, it's hard to
what would
say
it look
what's
like?
intentional.
Yeah, yeah, and what even would be them trying? Well, I guess just straight up not paying. I mean, yeah, we see disrespectful offers at times, of course. So
Right.
in some type of way, that's like. How do you feel about in reggaeton music where they like the Latin music where they don't offer royalty points? Would you say that's the case for Latin music? Because you kind of pointed that out to me.
Yeah, that seems to be a customs thing. And of course, how do I feel about it? I feel bad about it.
Yeah.
But I wish there was something I could do to change. But my clients who've gotten placements in that world usually was over the internet where they don't know anyone in person. So it's hard for them to be the ones to make that change happen.
Yeah. Would you say that clients who have a good relationship with the artist in real life have better success negotiating?
Interestingly, I think they have a harder time if they're personal friends with the artist because then that sort of threat the artist doesn't want to work with you anymore hits a lot harder if you're actually friends with that person. If it's someone who some if I emailed the artist with the one hot TikTok song to get on his first album, he doesn't want to work with me ever again. What are the chances that's going to matter? Not high.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never even considered that before. Yeah, because it does seem like, yeah, I'm noticing that with some of the producers I work with, like they have a really good connection with the artist, and they're like, "Yo, like I don't really want to cause a fuss and ask for what I'm entitled to because like we have a good connection." So that's an interesting perspective. Yeah, I guess to bring it back to the question I asked before, like what do you say to producers who are kind of scared to burn bridges with artists?
Oh man, that's a tough question because I do see the benefits of playing more so the long game. A lot of people will say don't sacrifice a relationship over a few $1,000s. I agree with that overall, but I also think that if you never step up and never tell people what you're worth, they'll keep just trying to screw you and lowball you every time.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing that you said was a lot your producers never fumbled a placement over asking for a bigger percentage. What is the significance of that?
So a lot of my clients are loop makers specifically. They're sending loops to Metro Boomin, Murder Beats, Ill Mind, all the big names. And and sometimes the bigger name who got the placement will come back with a that they'll want to split everything 75-25, maybe not or far away from the 50-50 split that my client wanted. However, they think about in the long run, like that 25% of a bigger song with a bigger name could lead to more opportunities in the future, even if it's just continuing to work with the big name, that they'll probably go with it, think about it in the long run. Of course, everyone has to draw a line somewhere. You don't want to take a disrespectful offer is one thing. I've seen people try to offer 90-10 splits, like my client will get 10%, even though they made the melody sample that the other producer just chopped up and then got the placement.
Yeah.
But just to give him 10%, that's also not fair.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So like you if they had to ask you how do you feel like let's say a client receives a 60-40 split with the major producer, maybe let's say a 70-30 split to make it a little bit more exaggerated, or I guess better, yeah, so the 50%, yeah, let's say a 70-30 split, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I hope the audience does too. So yeah, the bigger producer is keeping 70%, the loop maker is keeping 30%, and the producer asks you, how do you feel about this situation? Do you feel like this is fair? What would be your response, or something that you might say?
I would tell them to just assess the different factors. Is this someone who you just randomly emailed the sample to, or is this someone you actually work with, who you've worked with in the past? You know this guy in person? Because if it's someone you blind emailed, who cares about their threats and maybe stand firm. But like the previous example, if this was through working with Ill Mind, going to a song camp or something like that, and that's your in, maybe you don't want to burn that bridge, you know?
Okay, got you. Yeah, that makes sense. So would it be burning, like, do you for your bigger clients, have you seen, I don't know if this even really gets to you, but let's say you represent a big client and they're working with loop makers and a producer kind of starts causing a fuss over that percentage,
Oh,
trying to
I've
ask
seen
for
that.
yeah.
Right. I've seen that from the opposite side all the time, where a loop maker says, "I need half, I need 5K." I need 10K. When we're dealing with a small time artist who can't afford 10K, I've seen the artist say, "We can't come close to affording 10K. Are you really firm on that?" They say, "Yes." The song can't happen. They fumbled the bag
Yeah, and then the
over
song
just
just won't come out.
over just being unrealistic.
Yeah, yeah, damn. And then the industry producer will actually kind of stop working with that producer at some point,
Right.
right? Like, cause if you're an industry, or I don't really love the word industry producer, but I guess if you're a bigger name producer, like you do have so many loop makers to choose from. So if you have that many loop makers to choose from, like if somebody's giving you some type of problem, any type of problem at all, why would you choose to work with that producer? Why, like, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And an
Yeah.
underrated factor that I've seen too is that a lot of loop makers don't think about is if all of a sudden the artist hears that the song's not going to come out because the producers wanted 10K, he's going to go to the main producer who he knows, who he met in person, not the loop maker from overseas.
Yeah.
So it's making it the main producer's problem.
Yeah. So in your experience, and I don't know if you know this either, but in your experience, what, like if you're a major producer for your more major clients, how does it seem like they decide who to work with? Do you know what I mean?
In terms of other producers,
yeah, in terms of other producers, like when you reach a certain point, are they still taking, like, are they still taking loops from random people, like, you know what I mean? Or is it kind of like
it
they
seems
seem like they work with the same people
so.
consistently?
I'm not too involved in that,
Yeah.
but it seems like once you reach a certain point, you've dealt with so many messy situations from loop makers who don't know what they're doing, from randoms who fumbled the placement, that it seems like everyone learns to stop taking the loops from random people eventually.
Yeah. What about loops? How do you feel about producer? Shout out Kavi. I love Kavi. How do you feel about people like Kavi who sell loops to thousands of producers? Have you seen any messy situations that come from that type of placement. You know what I mean? Because when that loop gets placed, it might get placed twice. You know what I mean? And then what happens in those situations? Have you seen that before?
I've seen a lot of messy situations with a loop getting placed in two different songs, whether it was under anyone's control or they knew it, or they probably didn't know ahead of time, things like that. And yeah, those end up being messy. A lot of the times, sometimes the artist may, if they find out ahead of time, maybe the artist won't want to do the song because it's just lame to have a song with the melody from another song. Or the label may, I've also seen situations where the label does YouTube content ID and claims every song that has the beat in it, and that might claim another song that they had no idea about beforehand.
Yeah.
And if the other song is anything besides like a no-name small-time person, it's gonna be a problem.
Yeah. So how has that gone down in your experience? If let's say the label finds out after the both songs come out, like how does that does the first label?
So I've only dealt with one situation where the song that got content ID'd was not like a small-time person who just wouldn't care.
Yeah.
And the label had to pay, or sorry, my client had to pay the first artist basically like a settlement. Like, we're gonna have to take down your song, but we'll pay you in exchange for to be able to do that.
Got you. So what about with do you have some clients that are also pretty successful on like leasing beats online and pretty like have YouTube play like, you know, big on YouTube and stuff?
Yeah.
Have you seen any situations where a label has given any type of problem in terms of their worth? Like you're selling beats online for $30. Why would I give you a $4,000 advance?
So that specifically, I haven't seen, because it seems like everyone who's doing the beat lease thing also has their own direct connections and things like that, their own direct relationships. And yeah, that seems to just always happen where there's kind of two levels. People sell the people lease beats for $30, but and then at the same time work with major label artists for the much higher advances too.
Okay. Yeah. Do you see those producer? Do you ever recommend? Okay, this is one thing I want to ask you for sure. So if a artist isn't agreeing to a producer's fee, what are some alternative things the producer could ask for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you're dealing with an artist who just says straight up, we can't afford your fee, you're asking for too much, we want to work with you, if they're just being completely respectful, other options could include just increase the royalty on the back end. Maybe tag the producer as a primary artist on Spotify to get just more eyes on the producer. Or make the fee, instead of a $2,000 recoupable advance, maybe make it non-recoupable or half recoupable.
So what's the significance of that? Asking for half recoupable or recoupable for people who've like, I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
So recoupable advance, say you got a $5,000 recoupable advance, it means you don't see $5,001 until the label recoups, till they make back the $5,000 from your royalties.
Yeah.
And it's only based on your royalties. So if the producer gets 3%, which you're probably familiar with, they're only recouping their $5,000 advance based on 3% of the money generated. So it takes tens of millions of streams to actually make back the $5,000.
Yeah. So this transitions to another thing I want to talk about: master royalties. Like when you told me about master royalties and explained to me how master royalties work and tracking down master royalties, I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. And how does collecting master royalties work for a producer?
Mm-hmm. So the major labels don't make it easy. They put the onus on the producers to follow up every time. Although that shouldn't be the case, although that's technically even breaching their contract probably, they still put on the producer to reach out to the label to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, a lot of producers don't even know that this exists because so few songs actually recoup. If they take tens of millions of streams to recoup, that's cutting out just so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they've never even heard of this.
Yeah, yeah. Which is so weird to me because it's literally in there's three terms you have to negotiate as a producer. There's your advance, there's your points, and there's your publishing. And nobody ever asks, where are my points? Like, it's just, I've never even seen a producer, like, unless they've been told about it explicitly, like by somebody like us, like, yeah, your points, this is how they work. People are just like, yeah, 3 points, sure, whatever, I guess. Like, they never even think about it, I guess, which is really interesting. I don't know how that works, but I mean, I guess I see it. Like, so yeah, so because I mean, I'm not gonna say who, but like you assigned me to track down some master royalties for one of our clients, one of your clients, and we tracked down for 2 songs. Like one song specifically was like $150,000 he was owed, and nobody reached out to him like, hey, like we have this $150,000 waiting for you, and all of a sudden you were like, oh, he's probably owed money for. Did he ask you, or did you just think to ask?
I don't remember.
Yeah, but like the label just had over I think it was like $240,000 they just had sitting from 2 songs.
Yep.
And like it took me the process for me to track that down because you assigned me to do that. I reached out to can I say the name of the label?
Sure.
All right, so I reached out to Sony, and Sony's process is absolutely ridiculous. Like, it's like you have to send a email that you never get a response from for 2 months, and I'm just sitting there like I don't even know what to do. I had no idea what necessarily to do, and it took 8 months total to actually get him this $250,000. And all they have to do is register them with the system and submit a form. That's all they have to do.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Getting worked up.
Yeah, it's absurd, and that's something with producer royalty I want to lean on as a service more because it's like it's a very simple process, and there's so many producers that have just that they don't know about it, and like I'm stepping into kind of like a catalog management service a little bit too, which for those who don't know, catalog management, there's a lot of people like Lamont Graves and other companies, the Mezzo agency. Have you ever worked with them before? No, have you ever heard of them? Yeah, there's not many, but like essentially like Lamont Graves' business model is if you're a songwriter or just somebody who has music out in general, like he will go in for every song, make sure that everything that has to do for every song is being done so they could like collect all those all your royalties are being collected. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So whether that's tracking down sound exchange letters, direction, making sure your publishing's registered properly, whether you're owed master royalties or if you have a publisher at all, like all those types of things. So yeah, so master
it's a thankless job, but there's a lot of money there clearly.
Yeah, and I think if you like build a reputation, like you are starting to like produce your royalty maybe a little bit, and other people, it's like you can get things done faster, and the labels start to answer. You know what I mean? Like, do you see a lot for your producer clients? Like they'll reach out to labels and they'll say basically doing kind of exactly what you're doing, but then you reach out and then now the label's answering.
I mean, that is an unfortunate reality that I deal with a lot. A producer will follow up countless times, and then eventually they'll be so frustrated they'll bring me in. I'll say exactly what they've been saying, but the fact that I'm a lawyer, the fact that they know I'm going to make this a problem for them, they'll respond.
Is there any type of like tips that you have to get people to respond to produce if you're a producer?
The biggest thing is following up from before, honestly.
Yeah.
Follow up once a week, once every couple, and then ramp it up from there. If they don't respond once a week, then make it once every couple of days, then every single day, then call them. Their number's probably in their email signature. Call them.
Yeah.
People are also much nicer on the phone than they are via email.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's Do you feel like it's the lawyer's job? Like whose job is it to get the producer through the payment process? After the contract is signed, now this is time for the producer to get paid. Whose job is it?
So I guess I don't really have any strong feelings as to whose job it is, but so many producers and artists don't know whose job it is. They sign the contract and then don't get paid, but they don't even know why. They're not in, usually the artists or producers aren't in the emails. They don't know that your lawyer may not have followed up on this for a month. They just are in the dark.
Yeah. In your experience, whose job is it, or who usually takes on that role? I know you're producers, so it's like,
Right. We help producers get through that process. A lot of the times it's the managers too, but I've found that a lot of hip hop producers specifically, their first person on their team is a lawyer rather than the manager because they're already making relationships themselves. So yeah, I guess it is the lawyer's job.
Yeah, at that point, like it's like because I guess the lawyer knows how to do it, so they should be kind of. And it's like the more I talk to producers, it's just so common for the lawyers to just go completely ghost on their producer clients. Like from your perspective, you work on some pretty big deals yourself, and obviously producer agreements are one of the least profitable things you could work on, and sometimes the most frustrating things to work on too. I assume, right? Like, yeah. So how do you feel about like, let's say if you have a major publishing deal that you're working on, you'll get a pretty significant bag from that versus like 10 producer agreements. Like, how do you kind of? I don't know exactly what my question is, but how do you kind of?
Well, that's like the general mentality in the music, like across the music business, is to sign too many people, like more people than you can handle. The smallest people will get ignored. They'll eventually want to leave, and you just let them go, and that's just par for the course. You don't trap them in their deals, but that's still not a good way to build relationships.
Yeah. So yeah. So how do you feel about lawyers? How do you feel about lawyers who are really focused on building relationships and don't really go hard for their clients? Like, I don't know. That's
another sort of that's another sort of lawyer. And yeah, another big problem when you're looking for a lawyer is figuring out what the lawyer is actually going to do for you. Is the lawyer taking a percentage? Are they a big name lawyer who could get you a better deal just through their relationships? Like, yeah, so a lot of big name attorneys, they have good relationships with the people at the labels. So they may be able to get you a better deal from their relationships. And that's a thing. However, if there's an issue with that record deal that big lawyer helps you sign, is that lawyer going to really have your back? Probably not. He's
Mhm.
probably he got paid. He might not even respond. He might go ghost, like you were just saying.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense, huh? So you have seen that where it's like the bigger name lawyers kind of do, and if you ask the producer community, like you're a pretty big name lawyer, like for real. Like there's a lot of people I've come across that are like Adam is like the best lawyer in the community, like straight up. Like I've heard that a lot of times. Like you are known, like people have said, oh yeah, Adam's like a big shot lawyer, like for sure. And I know you're kind of separating yourself from that, but I think you are kind of in that space a
Well,
little
I
bit too.
appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely want to give you your flowers in that sense. But yeah, so I wanted to touch on this earlier, production deals specifically. So could you break down what a production deal is and how you see those usually go on the producer side?
So a production deal is basically any situation where you see someone signing to a bigger name producer, to a bigger name artist, signing to Travis Scott, signing to Murder Beat, started Murder Gang. But those deals are structured where basically that person's acting as the label, and everything goes through that person's company. Like for Travis Scott, like Cactus Jack Records. However, that means he's also going to get a percentage of all of the money that comes in from your music, from the advances from the publishing, and maybe a sort of 360 situation where he participates in the other streams like live touring and merch, things like that.
Yeah. So if a producer signs with another producer, what does the terms kind of look like for that usually?
Basically, they take 25, they sign you for say 3 years, for example, and they basically own all of your music like they're the label, and everything gets paid to them. They keep say 25 to 50% of everything and then pay you out the rest.
Yeah. So and they'll collect the money typically
And they'll
themselves
collect the
too,
money
right?
themselves too.
Yeah, and then the producer, since the producer is like, I've seen that the younger producers, they sign with them, they just kind of trust, like, I don't want to specifically say things, but they trust that small label or producer, and then they just don't even know that they're supposed to be getting master royalties, or they just have. I'm working with one producer right now who had never received $1 from his publishing because he signed over his producer. I mean, he signed over his publishing to the production deal, and he was just like, oh, they're collecting it, and I get a check sometimes, but I've never even like questioned what this check is for. So it's like it seems like a really dangerous situation to enter as a producer or as an artist as well. It's like you're giving this company the right to collect something that you could collect on your own, and it's like,
For sure. Yeah,
yeah,
logistically, all sorts of issues. The bigger artists or producers, attorney is probably going to handle your deals. Are you in touch with that attorney? A lot of times I see the answer is no.
yeah, that's so
Or are you
tricky.
even in touch with the person you're signing to? Or were you talking to the manager?
Hmm.
That's also, I see that a lot too, where they don't even know the person they signed to. They're
Yeah,
actually been talking to the manager the whole time.
that's so crazy. I can't even.
And maybe they'll meet them in the studio and say what's up, but
Yeah,
the big name doesn't know that person, won't have their back.
yeah. So do you feel like so we talked about this on AO Sim's pod? Sim is one of your clients. Shout out Sim. How do you feel about like producers signing with other producers in general? Like, what's your perspective on it?
I'm generally against it, pretty much in all circumstances. I
Production
mean,
deals.
the pros are that signing with the big name is going to get you an opportunity that you couldn't otherwise get yourself. Maybe that'll get you a Drake placement because you signed to one of the producers who works with Drake all the time. But beyond that, there's really no benefit. The part of the pro of the part of the benefit is that you'll go around saying you're signed to Travis Scott, like you're one of Travis Scott's producers. But eventually, even if things start to go well, you'll get sick of that really quick. And even best case scenario, the person you signed to does start making some introductions, does start getting you relationships. 2 years down the line, you're still signed to that person, or they made the first initial relationships, but then you took it from there for 2 years. Why are they entitled to take a percentage of the stuff that I worked on 2 years later just because they made that initial relationship? Once
Yeah.
that money starts coming in, you'll start getting resentful quick.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, it seems like Sim's situation with ATL Jacob is like best case scenario.
It's
'Cause
best
they are
case scenario.
so close and they're always working in together. So yeah, because he was, he was saying on that podcast that it really worked out for him. And
And
I guess
ATL Jacob is a rare case. That relationship is a rare case
Yeah.
where I'm constantly surprised by what ATL Jacob's doing for him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a blessing for sure. Yeah, and something else you say about that is what else do you say about production deals that I wanted to bring up? Forgot what I was gonna say. Well, yeah, no, that's great perspective on production deals as well too. So, got like 5 minutes left. What should I touch on last? Let's see. Let's touch on just publishing deals for a second. Um, what are some things that producers should consider when they're looking for a publishing deal?
So the main terms of a publishing deal are basically the biggest difference between a publishing admin deal and a co-pub deal, where there's usually a big advance, a big major advance involved, is just how long the company collects for. Like an admin deal will sign you for 2 to 3 years. They'll register your music and they'll just collect a piece of anything that comes in during those 2 years. But a co-pub deal with a big major advance, all the music that you put out during the 2 3 years, they'll own a piece and collect forever. So if you have a hit song during that time, you're giving up a lot more.
Yeah, that it doesn't have to be forever.
It doesn't have
could
to be
like,
forever,
but the
but it's a lot.
retention period is usually like 50. Like it could be like 10 to 15 years, and at that point, 15 years from now, the song's not even making money. So it's
Right.
like, yeah. So it got you. Huh. So the main thing for you, if you're advising your clients, would be kind of to look for the term, the length of the deal.
Right.
Yeah, gotcha.
It just depends on too many different factors of
Yeah.
whether a deal makes sense for them at that time,
A lot of co-pub deals, what they say is that the reason why they're taking a larger percentage is that they're going to be getting you placement. They'll help you get placements and put you in rooms and stuff like that. Have you seen success with that with some of your
Definitely.
clients? Yeah.
Definitely. The major publishers could help. Yeah, they'll set up sessions for you. Just having someone besides your manager, just reaching out, trying to get placements, sending out one more person sending out your beats couldn't hurt. It's still a value add, even if
Okay.
they don't get anything. You still have someone else hustling for you.
Yeah, but I mean, they are taking more from you though, so it's like, have you've seen it kind of still weigh out? Like this was a great deal for you, even still. Like it's hard to say, but
It's hard to say because
yeah,
personally, I don't trust that anyone's really going to add value for you. So you should probably even put that to the side. Does the deal make sense? Assuming the worst case scenario. That's kind of how I look at it. If they're offering you an undeniable amount of money, you're probably going to take the deal, and what they're going to do for you on the side doesn't even really matter.
yeah.
However, if you're locking into maybe a deal that's extra long, maybe they're giving you the lower advance, but they say they're going to help build you up. Maybe you should think about that. Are these the right people who are really going to do that?
Yeah, gotcha. That makes sense. Well, this was an amazing episode. I asked all the questions that I wish I would have found on a podcast earlier, and this consolidated it. And I feel like this was insanely informative. And I'm speaking for the audience that I know this was really useful for sure.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adam. Appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. And yeah, do you want to tell people where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me online at acfreedmanlaw.com or on Twitter and Instagram at acfreedmanlaw.
Sounds good.
Thanks
All
for
right.
having me.
Appreciate you.